I really believe that there's all these little incidents that take place throughout the course of our life that ultimately they're like punches to the stomach, right? And all they're doing is essentially just kind of strengthening your core. So when that big moment comes, that big incident, which for me was my injury in Iraq, and just hits you so hard it knocks you down, well, luckily you've taken enough punches to the core where you have the core strength to sit up and then to get up and then kind of proceed and move forward.
It's easy to talk about the successes, but what doesn't get talked about enough is the struggle. My name is Eric Weinmeier. I've gotten the chance to ascend Mount Everest, to climb the tallest mountain in every continent, to kayak the Grand Canyon, and I happen to be blind. It's been a struggle to live what I call a no barriers life, to define it, to push the parameters of what it means. And part of the equation is diving into the learning process and trying to illuminate the universal elements that exist along the way. In that unexplored terrain, between those dark places we find ourselves in and the summit, exists a map. That map, that way forward, is what we call no barriers.
Today we meet J.R. Martinez, an actor, best-selling author, motivational speaker, advocate, and wounded U.S. Army veteran. You may know J.R. from his performances on ABC's Dancing with the Stars, where he and his partner Smirnoff were named season champions. He starred and co-starred on a number of shows, including daytime drama All My Children. He's spoken to troops at various bases around the world, universities, nonprofits, and Fortune 500 companies. Martinez is also the author of the New York Times best-selling book, Full of My Heart, My Story of Survival, Strength, and Spirit. Well, we are here in Lake Tahoe at our No Barriers Summit, which happens every year in a different location. And we're thrilled to have J.R. Martinez with us, longtime member of our No Barriers community. It's going to be a great conversation. Eric, you want to kick us off and get us started? You'll be speaking here at the No Barriers Summit, and J.R. is going to be a part of our experience as well. But why don't you get us started?
Well, we have Whitney tomorrow teaching dance classes, right? Is that tomorrow?
That is.
The next day?
Yeah,
no,
Whitney,
that's on Friday.
Whitney Way-Thor will be teaching dance classes Friday.
Yeah, I'm going to
Saturday.
jump in on that class. I have to. I've been called out, so you have to.
The video we have of Eric
dancing.
I want to be there to see this. I'm going to judge you. I'm going to critique you. I'm going to be like Bruno on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh,
just
it's
come out with
awful.
some really colorful commentary.
Dancing for me is like it's just so incredibly awkward because I can't see what other people are doing.
That's a
and
good
so
thing.
I'm just like in my own head, and I'm so crazily self-conscious.
Oh, you just have to.
But I just have
that.
to let go, And then once I let go, I'm happy until then people start commenting later.
Yeah, well, I think that's the key. Is like you just have to make yourself believe that what you're doing that feels incredibly awkward is exactly what everyone else is doing, because that's exactly what is happening. Is everyone else is incredibly awkward. And those, for me, I've always been a fan of dance. Like, I've always been a fan of it. Like, I mean, I was the kid, and I mean, I remember in high school, I was a senior in high school, and it was one of our dances, and they were supposed to shut down the dance at, I don't know, whatever hour it was. And everyone was having such a good time, and the principal she was pretty stern, and she kind of, marched around, and there was any inappropriate dancing or anything, hey, stop, cut it out. And then I remember she came around and started telling everyone, okay, we're going to stop, soon. And I went up to her and I grabbed her hands and I started dancing with the principal. And it wasn't one of those things where she was like this incredibly attractive principal. Like, she was like the, what's the movie? I watched it with my daughter, Matilda, and the lady that's the head of the house. Like, she's like that, like this tall woman, really strict looking. I mean, and I grabbed her hands and I started dancing with her. And I just started moving her around, and then, come on, can we stick around? And we were able to stick around, I think, like another half an hour or so. And I've always been the kid that, of course, if you create like a circle, everyone get a circle, and then everyone get in the circle like one at a time, and then you'll get the one or two people that actually know what they're doing and have prepared for this moment their whole life. And all of a sudden they're like, oh, like what they're doing, like what they're doing. But then you'll have the person that is Erik, that is incredibly awkward, has no idea what they're doing. And we're like, yes, he's letting go. She's letting go. They're not afraid of the judgment, and get everyone else in this and to create this energy of where you're like encouraging that person. So instead of a person that's doing that, hearing like silence or like, what are they doing? Instead, they hear, yes, yes, go. If you know their name, say their name, say their name, say their name. And I think that's such an empowering thing. And I think for me, having the opportunity to obviously go onto a dance competition, to Dancing with the Stars, and it was just organic for me, because it was like, well, I'm just going to dance with a lot of my friends here. And they weren't my friends. There were a lot of strangers that the audience that was brought in. But to me, that night, they were friends. And so I just kind of let go and just had fun. And that's the beauty of it. I mean, if you put me on a dance floor right now, this is, what is this, 7 years post the fact that I was on the show. I mean, I would just go back to the Running Man, go back to the sprinkler. I would go back to the shopping cart. Like I would go back to all of those like very basic moves that we probably saw on Soul Train or something.
The sprinkler, is there really? It's something called the lawnmower.
Oh yeah, the lawnmower.
Yeah, I remember this. Right?
Yeah, man. See, that's what you could pull out.
I'm gonna do some of this. Yeah, because that I can relate to. Like,
do that, man. Yeah. Everybody can relate to that.
Walk the dog. I could start just making stuff up.
Yes, you could do some that are themed to being blind.
Yeah,
you could have, like
the
exactly.
cane tap.
The cane, exactly.
I'm doing motions right now for everyone, by the way. All right. It sounds like you
the cane tap. I love that.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna make all this stuff.
But hold on, can I do that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, you can do that.
Because then other people would say, well, why are you doing the cane tap, JR? You're not allowed to.
Well, you can close your eyes when you.
I just close my eyes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Blindfold.
All right.
You have a good so it sounds like you didn't let the pressure get to you. You just were having fun and didn't take it super seriously.
Yeah,
and that probably seemed like a big advantage, right?
It was an incredible advantage. I think. Well, there was a couple of things that I always believe. I mean, now post the fact that a lot of the major trauma that I've been through in my life, the biggest trauma that I went through in my life was in 2003. So here we are, 16 years later. But 16 years after the fact, I'm able to say this because I'm in a different place. I'm in a great place in my life. But I really believe that there's all these little incidents that take place throughout the course of our life that ultimately, which I like to use the metaphor, the analogy of, they're like punches to the stomach, right? And all they're doing is essentially just kind of strengthening your core. So when that big moment comes, that big incident, which for me was my injury in Iraq, and just hits you so hard it knocks you down. Well, luckily you've taken enough punches to the core where you have the core strength to sit up and then to get up and then kind of proceed and move forward, right? So and I believe that there were a lot of incidents that took place in my life that prepared me for the grandest stage that I've been on, which is Dancing with the Stars. Is one, when you survive and almost losing your life, when you are now a survivor and you've made it on the other side of that, everything else seems easy. One, but then two, I was kind of to some degree thrust into the acting space of. I got this audition to become an actor on a soap opera called All My Children.
Yeah.
And they were launching a storyline about a veteran. And they thought, what are the odds of us finding a real life veteran that has some acting experience? So they sent out this huge casting call, and I got the email, and I thought, well, why not? And suddenly, when they told me I got the job, I had to move to New York City immediately. I had all of these scripts stacked in my hotel room because I didn't have a place to live yet. And literally, it was just like episode after episode after episode, and you had to remember all this dialogue, and and I got into my own head. So many times I got into my own head where I'm like, I don't belong here. I'm not as qualified as the rest of the actors that are on the show that are trained to be in this space. And I survived. I made it through, and I was able to mentally kind of get myself into the space of saying, you know what? If I'm only going to be here 3 months, it's going to be the best 3 months ever. That was my approach, and because of that mentality, because I was willing to listen, because I was willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. And I watched a lot of the other actors on set. I was able to turn that 3 month, what was supposed to be a stint, into a 3-year opportunity. So suddenly I get thrown onto Dancing with the Stars. There's really no pressure, Eric, because when they made the cast announcements, I mean, they were talking about, for example, Metta World Peace, the basketball player. He was a Laker at the time. And everybody knows who he is, right? And so people are cheering for him. David Arquette, everybody knows who David is. Cheers. Ricky Lake, Nancy Grace, everybody's cheering for the rest of the cast members. Rob Kardashian, J.R. Martinez. And it was like almost like dead silence. Like it was like nobody knew who I was, because although I was on a soap opera for 3 years, not that many people watch soaps anymore. And certain ones too. And so not many people knew who I was. And so I was kind of, people were almost, there was a thing. It's not a thing anymore, but in Vegas, you actually could bet. You could actually bet on who you believed was going to win the competition.
It's crazy what you can bet on.
And
right?
I didn't know, because I would have bet everything. Right. I would have made more money from the bet.
Like who's going to get knocked out first, and like And the odds were they were against me. No one thought that I was going to make it past, like, I think it was week 3. Like nobody thought that. And so for me, it was like, I've always been in this position to where I've been an underdog, and to some degree, people kind of boxing me into something, because as Eric, as you're aware, because I'm sure to some degree in your life, you've dealt with this and probably still deal with this. And I'm sure David and you guys have seen this with other, participants in No Barriers, that people, there's a label that's placed on individuals, right? Like by outsiders that don't understand. And it's almost equivalent to like when you're moving into a house and you're like, honey, what do we do with this? And I don't really understand it. I don't really know what to do with this. So we just put it in a box, label it, and push it off into the corner of the house. And maybe one day we'll open it, right? And then figure out, oh, wow, there's some actually hidden jewels in this, some diamonds, some beautiful things that we can actually utilize in our home that would make our home, even more of a more comforting place. And so for me, like, I've always had these labels placed on me ever since I was injured. That's a human thing, right?
It is a human thing.
You want to stick people in categories and boxes,
right?
And just so everything's neat and tidy, and
because it doesn't require much energy and effort from us whom I may not understand Eric's world, but instead of actually trying to spend the time and the energy to ask you and be curious and listen to what you have to say, instead it's easier for me to label it and move on with my life and go do something else. And that is what I believe. That's where people miss so mmany incredible opportunities to learn from other people's experiences, is that ability to sit down and truly listen. There's a difference between listening and hearing. Like hearing is what you do with your wife or your husband, right? You're like, I hear you. Gosh, I hear you. Yeah, but you're not listening to me. And like they're two very different things. And for me, I believe that I have been shaped to the person that people are listening to right now because of the amount of listening that I have done over the course of 16 years, and just picking something from Eric, from Dave, from all the other No Barriers ambassadors and participants and everybody else that I've come in contact with. They, to some degree, have left something with me because I've been receptive and open to receiving whatever it was.
Yeah. And you've met some crazy, cool people along the way too.
I have, and a lot more crazy than cool. But and people would classify me as the crazy or the cool, But and I have, and it's one of the things that and Dave mentioned here, we're here at the summit in Lake Tahoe, and I'm excited to get out and meet more people that this is maybe their fifth time at the summit, or maybe their first time at the summit, and I'm anxious to meet those individuals. To kind of see where they are from where they were a few years ago, and to meet those new people that are first timers that, well, what are you expecting to get out of this? And I think the biggest thing is I'm curious to see how many people are going to be vulnerable in this space.
Yeah. Because
this is the space to be vulnerable and be open and receptive to something completely unexpected that is going to change your perspective, that is going to influence you, that is going to inspire you, that is going to actually give you some sort of challenge and a call to action to say, I have to do something. And I can't tell you how many times, even till this day, people expect me to be this, and I am, and like I'm a positive guy, but I'm still a human being. And I've had people in the past, not recently, but people in the past that would say to me, say something positive for me right now. I'm like, what does that mean? Like, I mean, look around. Like, I mean, just literally look around. Like, look at that child that is incredibly innocent. Play. Look how that child fell and got back up. Look how that child ran to their parent. Look at the birds. Look at nature. Look at the mountains. Just look around. And I have my moments where, I'm just kind of in my own head. I repeat that vicious cycle that I think all of us take part in that time to time. And I remember, for example.
Yeah, that's refreshing for people because like you project as like a really confident, studly dude. And
thank you. Is this the awkward part where you start like complimenting me?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm cool with it. We just cut the interview off and just go down that road.
But you do that head talk. It sounds like you're saying like when you got the soap opera, like, oh, do I fit in? Like, so everyone does that. Probably,
everyone
right?
does. Everyone does. And if you say you don't, then you're not being honest with yourself, which is the first and most important person you have to be honest with is yourself. Yeah. And I, for so many years, and there's so many facets of my life. Obviously, we could talk about my injury in Iraq, but just from a personal dynamic, there's so many interesting elements to my life that I've had to break cycles, and I've had to, but first and foremost, understand what those cycles are and where I fit into those cycles, and understand, do I want to be a part of that cycle? And if I did not want to be a part of that cycle, how do I break it? And who's going to help me break it? And I think that's what's beautiful about No Barriers it's about people, their willingness to come here, their willingness to be vulnerable, their willingness to take a deep look at themselves and say, okay, what cycles am I a part of that I've given so much power to this one thing or multiple things that has controlled me and to some degree has labeled me, yet now I want to meet other people that are going to be a part of my road team, my support team forever, and life, help me climb that mountain of life and obstacles that are going to help me get through it. And I think for me, it's incredibly important to be vulnerable and to be open and honest with everybody regarding the day-to-day challenges. As I mentioned, like I had a couple of months ago, I had a speaking engagement in Atlanta, and I was flying back home to Austin. And I just remember on the plane, I just started thinking about some stuff, the mind, man. And I just started thinking about some stuff in my life. And I just kind of got a little bummed and just kind of, I got to the airport and this great attitude and this great energy. And then just something was the trigger. And I went to that place, and I've never been shy about going to whatever that place is. Right. Because I believe that's where the true fruits and the juices are. Like when you're willing to immerse yourself into that wine barrel, you get some good stuff that you want to have more glasses of, right? And here I am sitting on the plane in this little bit of a funk. I get off the plane, I go out to my car, and I go out to the cashier, pull up to exit the airport to pay. And the lady, as I give her my ticket, an elderly, I say elderly, but she was literally probably in her late 70s, early 80s, Asian woman. And she sees my hand. And for those listening, my hands are burned. And so she sees my hand and she says, can I ask you what happened to you? Now, right there, I could have shut it down and said no. Right. Or I could have said, I prefer not to talk about it. In whatever way, I could have shut it down. But I said, no, that's fine. And I said, this is what happened to me. And she said, can I touch your scar? I could have, second opportunity, shut it down. Right. Instead, I've learned to be receptive and open to wherever this is going.
Right,
and
let it roll.
Yeah, and I said, okay, all right. And she touched it, and she was like, wow, that's incredible. And we talked a little bit about kind of the recovery process and my injury. And then she said, I want to share something with you. And she said, I want to share this, and I've tried to find information and kind of piece it together because she had a little bit of an accent, so it was really hard to kind of truly understand everything she was saying. But she said, Amitabha, and she said it's a Buddhist term, and it essentially means, Amitabha means infinite light. That you provide light for others. And she goes on and on about this in-depth description of what this, and yet there's cars behind me. They're probably like, what's going on, man? God, pay your ticket. Let's get out of here. And I'm having this really intimate moment with this lady that after she shares that with me, and she says, can I just say a little prayer for you? And I said, sure. Again, I could have shut it down. No, oh, sure. And she says, and quietly just closes her eyes, holds my hand, says a little prayer. And then afterwards, I just felt like this weight, like she had taken all of my energy that I had that was negative and just dispersed it somewhere that I no longer had it inside of me. So when the gate went open, flew up, and I was able to pull out, I just felt great. I put the windows down, I put on some music, and I just started jamming on my way home. And I got home to my girls, and I said, babe, Amitabha. She was like, what? And I was like, well, this is what she said. I think I'm pronouncing. I got to look it up, and I got to ask some friends about what it means. But again, I was willing to be vulnerable and willing to open myself up to a source that honestly I haven't even come in contact with since that day.
To let that light sort of
all the time
connect.
Yeah, and to allow that, she was the match, she was the igniter to something inside of me, to allow me to kind of find that thing that I needed. And so the point of me sharing that story is that there are countless amount of triggers that exist in my life every single day. I have a beautiful 7-year-old daughter, and what happens when you have kids? Well, I'm around her friends. And what happens when you're around her friends who do not understand this, who's someone who has a facial burn, who has people will label as a disfigurement. I catch looks all the time from kids. I get the questions. There's the kids that are really incredibly respectful, and there are the other kids that are like, what happened to you? You know, It's just like straight up honest. And those are triggers. And I cannot, and none of us that are listening, because all of us have something that a scar and a wound that's still open to some degree. And we all have to be honest with ourselves that there will always be a trigger. There will always be a trigger that will find its way in, that will surface to the top and will present itself eye to eye with you. And you have to do the work to give yourself the tools and the resources. So when that moment presents itself, because it will, you know how to get through it. And it's not gonna send you into this relapse of where now you're back to where you were when you were a true victim. You've become a survivor, but if you don't have the tools and the resources, that moment will trigger you to go back into where you're a victim again, and you have to start over.
What are some of your triggers still? I mean, I know I have some like weird triggers.
Yeah.
Like, it's like hard to even figure it out because you're kind of blind to it. Sometimes.
Yeah. You know, I think there is an element of, I mean, like I said, people looking at me.
Yeah. That's a big trigger, right?
That's a big trigger. And
you have to fight that a little bit.
I do. But I also have to catch myself, Eric, because, not everybody is staring at me for the same reasons that they did 8, 9, 10 years ago. Now people sometimes stare at me because they recognize me and they're like, celebrity. Is that him? And I have to remind myself of that. You know, like I had a moment one time where I was like, oh, okay, I'm the bad guy, where I just gotten off a plane. I went to a CVS and I was with my buddy and I wasn't feeling well. And so I went to the CVS to get some medicine, and And I'm in the aisle and I'm reading like what medicine to pick up, and this guy comes in down the aisle and he's standing on kind of like the same aisle further down from me, and he's just kind of I can feel it, and I'm sure you have the same instinct, Eric, where you can just feel the eyes on you, and I just kind of like over my shoulder a little bit, just saw, we made eye contact, and I turned back and I was just like, okay, you know, what am I gonna get? What are my symptoms? And then I was like, okay. And then I went to another aisle, and sure enough, he came around the corner just looking at me, and I was like, does he think I'm gonna steal something? Like, what is going on? Like, is it my scars? Like, what is going on? I go up to pay. He's about 2 people behind me, and I say to my buddy, I was like, man, that's it. Like, this guy, like, come on. And I walked up to him. I said, "Can I help you?" And
Good for you.
And he said, he was startled because he didn't. He's like breaking the fourth wall, and he was like, you know, I'm sorry if you caught me, you know, staring at you. You just look like that guy that was on Dancing with the Stars. And that guy is my hero, and he means this to me, and he meant that to me. He goes into this deep story that I immediately just like feel like I'm melting, like, God, JR. And then I was like, well, yeah, I'm that guy. Like, and And I have to remind myself. But that's probably one of the biggest things.
That's what we were doing. That my wife was like sneaky glances over, like, I think that's JR.
I think it might be him.
So you probably get that all the time. Like, yeah, there he is. Oh my God.
Yeah,
So cool.
And I think part of it is I never prepared to be what people would label me as a celebrity. That wasn't something I got into this space to do. I got into the space because I thought it was an incredibly exciting opportunity for me personally. Right. But then I started to learn, well, this is an incredible opportunity for the community that I represent, which is not just limited to veterans, which I thought early on I can only speak to veterans and that's the only person I can connect with, but that's not true. And there's a whole community I represent. And so I started to realize, wait a minute, there's a lot of individuals that me having this opportunity is going to benefit them and hopefully make it easier for someone to interact with them. And thank God, like I have had people come up to me and said, hey, listen, there was somebody that we didn't know how to interact with. And after seeing you on that show, we were able to just interact with them easily. I've had people come up to me and say, people now come up to me and say this instead of this. And they say because they saw you. And Eric, it's like you probably don't realize the effect and the impact you have on people's lives because you're just too busy living your own life and trying to take care of your family's life to think about what effect am I having on somebody else. And I think when you have those reminders that come, I mean, that's a beautiful moment that not everybody in this world is in an incredible position that you and I are in where, not everybody has somebody that comes up to them and says, hey, great job. Like, I want to thank you and tell you how that was impactful. There's people every day that go to 9 to 5 and never hear a thank you, never get a pat on the back, never get any sort of acknowledgement professionally and personally. And for you and I to be in that position, I mean, I think more importantly, I don't do it for that.
Yeah.
But if there was something I do it for, that's why I do it. I don't do it for the notoriety. I do it because I want to feel like I'm helping people realize something in their first chance at life from my second chance at life.
Right. You have this incredibly authentic story, right? And it becomes a strength, right, in your life, right? Because you're quote unquote imperfect, right?
Yeah.
And that's that becomes the thing that people look at you and they respect.
Right.
That's a crazy thing.
Yeah, it is. And, how do you, I think for me, what I've been trying to figure out over the last few years is the story now, to some degree precedes me, right? To some degree, how are we able to take the conversation where it's about fatherhood or being a husband or sports or, but I understand the power that comes with the story. I understand the importance of sharing the story. And so for me, someone asked me recently, you're able to talk about what happened to you so nonchalant. It doesn't bother you? Do you ever have, obviously the three letters that are always going to surface when there's a veteran in the room and is PTS and post-traumatic stress. Do you ever deal with that every time you talk about it? I said, I don't, because I've talked about it so much that I can talk about the day I was injured in great detail, no different than I told that I got a pepperoni pizza at the deli earlier and it was delicious. And I probably had way too much of it, than I should have. And it's just in passing. It's just kind of how it is.
When I talk about going blind in front of groups, sometimes I still get a little, I feel a little energy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's just these moments in your life that the energy never quite goes away.
Yeah. Well, because I don't know about you, but I know that I've recently kind of had these moments where I've thought to myself, I forget what I've been through,
right,
to some degree. And not that I've purposely have tried to bury it and lock it away in a safe and forget the code. Just more so, I'm just too busy living and trying to survive and trying to build that I'm not thinking about what I have overcome. And when I have those moments, when I do talk about it, when I have those moments where I am reminded, I then suddenly become pumped, and I'm like, wow. And I think the statement that we've all heard, people say always look forward, never look back.
Yeah.
And I disagree with that. I think it is important to look back. I think it is important to be reminded how far you've come, what you have overcome, where you're coming from. I think it is important to look back, but I think sometimes for me, I'm not really looking back as much. I'm just too focused on where I'm going and what I'm trying to accomplish.
Especially because you have a family now, right? That keeps you busy as a dad. How did you meet your wife and stuff? And was that, after your injury, was that harder to meet people, to meet women?
Yeah, absolutely. So I met her after my injury.
Yeah.
I met her, we started dating in 2010. At that point, I had never gone to therapy or really kind of dealt with my emotions per se, like my emotional and mental wounds. I talked about it a little bit with my best friend, Dan, and he kind of helped navigate through a lot of that stuff. But I never really sat down and immersed myself and sat in it. And then when her and I started dating, I got on dancing. Her younger sister unexpectedly passed away from it, just unexpectedly. And then our daughter was born, and I was gone. I was always gone. I was always on the road. I was writing the book. I was. If you looked at my life, it was everything was amazing. If you looked at her life, everything was not, because here she was trying to nurture and take care of our child, our daughter, yet still mourn and grieve the loss of her younger sister, whom she was incredibly close to.
Yeah.
And yet we were both in LA, and my wife's originally from New York. And so all her family and friends were in New York, and she was in LA by herself. And so there were just tremendous challenges, and both of us needed something completely different from one another, right? And what it did is it stressed our relationship to the point where, that we ended the relationship, and that in itself was challenging because it became very public. It was like that was not something we were both prepared for, and it became very public that they split up. And but then what I had to do is I had to look at myself and figure out, what role did I play in this, because I know I had some role in this. And I went and found a counselor, and I sat down, and I just did like an intensive boot camp with this counselor, where this lovely lady, and I said to her, "How often can I come to you?" And she was like, well, once a week. And I was like, well, I have like 6 weeks that I have I'm free. Can I come to you twice a week or 3 times a week if schedule permits? And she's like, if you're open to do the work, she's like, I don't know what we're going to get into, but it can be emotional. It can be pretty heavy and draining on you if you're okay. I said, no, I'm good. And I did it. And literally those 6-7 weeks gave me so much insight into, when you talk about barriers, and, obviously we're talking about no barriers, but what that taught me was, in certain elements and certain environments, it's important to have barriers. And I think so many of us, we just think that, it's like, well, no, this is the way it is. And I had to learn in certain environments and circles and certain cycles that I was a part of with my family and my parents, and a lot of things that underlying issues that stemmed from my childhood, from my injury. There were certain things that I needed to create barriers. I needed to understand what I needed to say no to. I needed to understand how I needed to prioritize better. I needed to understand all of these different elements to ultimately be a good partner and to be a great father.
Is that like having maybe more like empathy? Or because since I'm trying to put myself in that situation, you're getting a lot of attention at that point, right? And so do you kind of forget about maybe sometimes all the things that she's struggling with?
And you're absolutely right, because look what I'm struggling with. It's hard to be on the road. It's hard to have to do this every single night. It's hard, and I had to learn that a big part of it was not necessarily always knowing. It was more of just your willingness to listen,
right.
Listen, not listen to respond. And I think a lot of what I did prior to us then, fixing our relationship and getting back together to now we're married and it's a beautiful picture. It's the picture that I think all of us strive for. But in order to get to that place, I think I had to also learn as well. I don't always have to have the answers. And I think that I'm always the guy that's like the solution. Here's the solution.
Yeah.
Fix it. Tell me the problem. Okay, let's stop talking about the problem because I know what it is. Here's a solution and let's move forward. And I had to learn, well, wait a minute. I'm not here to always find the solution and create the solution. I'm here to just listen to you vent and listen to you process and find the solution for yourself. And when that moment presents itself, I'm here and you will tell me, you will verbalize, this is where I need you, JR, and I'm ready. And that was such an incredible component of our relationship that I think has allowed us to grow, and I think is going to allow us to continue to grow from this point on.
So it's like an awareness thing, isn't it?
It is. It is an awareness.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I want to. The last time I spoke to you on the phone, you were heading to Disneyland with your family. One of the things that I'm just sort of curious for your perspective on is, everything you're talking about here, whether in your own personal relationship or your own journey. You talked about this idea of being able to handle the gut punches that come, so you're ready for the big gut punch. As a father now, and seeing your kids interact with all the other kids that they interact with, how do you think you prepare kids for that? What do you do to prepare? There's a lot of talk today about the things that, the rates of depression and suicide in kids, and how the anxiety in kids, and how do you prepare kids to embrace the adversity they might face, to take the gut punches? What do you think about that as in your own life and the things that you've seen?
Doing what I'm doing today, and that's bringing my daughter to the summit. I like to believe that exposing her to all of these different communities and cultures and differences, that when she gets older and she finds herself in an environment that she feels like maybe this is not the best environment, she doesn't have to settle for that. She has the wherewithal and the knowledge to understand that there are all these other worlds and communities that she can be a part of, and it doesn't have to look like her. It doesn't have to be the community that she grew up in. That she will know to look outside of that comfort zone and to seek outside that comfort zone, look outside of that box, and then she'll find that community that's right for her. And I think, and I've spoken to a lot of parents, because parents have asked me, like, well, what should we do with our children? Because we feel like our children are feel to some degree isolated. I'm like, get them out. Help them find that purpose in their life as well. Get them involved in service. Some sort of service. Whether it's volunteering at Special Olympics, or volunteering at if they're they have their no bears around, volunteering at the school, volunteering at the soup kitchen, you just get involved. And I think for me, that is something that I know my wife and I are incredibly passionate about, is exposing our young 7-year-old daughter to essentially the world.
Yeah, she's going to meet people here that are incredible. My kids, when they were little, they'd come to the summit and they'd shake somebody's arm and they'd reach out and they'd have a clamp. They'd just shake their clamp. Like, hey, some people have clamps, some people have hands.
And you know what? And when one day, when I always think about it twofold, and I think no parent ever wants to think about it this way, but I guess in the back of my mind, I always, not that I live in fear and expect the worst, but I always know that that's always, a turn away. I get it. Like, I understand. I know what happened to me, and I know how quickly it happened to me. So I know that none of us are safe, unfortunately. But I think about that in two ways. I think about as she gets older, if she comes in contact with somebody that has a clamp, or she'll shake that like it's a hand, and give it the nice firm handshake that we're teaching her to give it, and make eye contact and speak firmly and have a great conversation. Yeah.
And if something were to ever happen to her, right? She'll have that gut punch. Maybe.
Exactly. God forbid.
Because things happen to people.
Exactly. She'll be able to say, well, I remember going to a summit in Lake Tahoe, California, and I met this girl or this guy that had X, Y, and Z, and I remember hearing he or she did this, and they were going to go do this. Maybe that little recovery is a little bit faster because of that exposure.
And I want to. So you talked about giving your kids more than you had, and that strength and so forth. And I was fascinated reading your book by your mom. Man, your mom is incredible. Yeah. She's a immigrant from El Salvador, right?
That's correct.
She's like 4'11".
Yeah.
And
she's 4'10".
4'10".
It turned out she claimed 4'11", and then
lying,
a few years
giving herself
ago,
an inch.
she tried to say she was 5 feet. And I was like, "You're not 5 feet tall." And it just so happened that we were where we were. There was that scale, where it's like the weight and the height measurement. And I said, "Well, let's just settle this." Perfect. And so she stepped on it, and she was 4'10". So see, you should have just ran with the 4'11". What you've had this your whole life. But yeah,
seems like so much of your strength comes from your mom.
it does. It does. But a lot of the good and a lot of the bad. And I'll explain. I'll clarify. Like, my mother has faced tremendous adversity in her life. I mean, she was abused. She was given away by her mother. She was neglected. Her father. She witnessed him. He was murdered. She witnessed that. She had my two sisters. And then their fathers bailed on her. She came to this country.
Didn't she like swim across the and like the coyotes they got her across, all that kind of crazy story.
It's insane because and you're absolutely right. And she gets here only to find out a couple years later that one of my sisters passed away from an illness that she was born with.
Right.
My mother never was allowed to, because then at that point I was born, so she never went back to El Salvador to see her daughter, to bury her daughter.
And that was your sister who was born like without like bones or something in her feet, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And then my mother, in the midst of, again, my father bails and just this horrible luck, but she, of course, at that time is just trying to survive and get through, and she's not understanding like what is her role in all of this. What are her choices that she's making that is ultimately, unfortunately, finding these men? Because in the midst of her trying to find a solid relationship for herself, but a solid male figure, father figure for me, fell into some really bad relationships, and to the point where it was physical, and she was abused in that sense. And I remember being 5-6 years old, and her walking me through the routine that when he decides to drink, this is what you do. And I would grab the phone and dial those 3 numbers and hide in the closet until they arrive. I mean, it's just like, and that's unfortunately too common of a story.
Yeah.
But I get my strength in the fact that she always smiled. She always has found a way to put a smile on her face. This little frame would just get beat up in life and always pull herself back up and just find a way to just work and provide for me and my other sister.
She was like cleaning houses and taking care of kids and cleaning toilets.
Yeah, in hotels and houses and babysitting. And then she worked in restaurants, and she was doing everything she could. Yeah. And when I say that's the fighter, that's the fighter that I witnessed. That I inherited, that's who she is, a fighter, and she is an optimistic person. It's bigger than the 4'11" frame. This laughter that she has that will fill a whole ballroom, and I got that from her. This incredibly optimistic way of looking at life and approaching life. I got that from her, but also what I did get from her was this. My mother never dealt with it. My mother just kind of like, no, and no, everything's fine. Everything's fine. Right. Almost trying to like kind of push it to the wayside and never deal with it, never address it. And that was something that I know that I got from her, that I did for a very long time. I know for a very long time, I didn't listen well, to go back on that. And in doing that work and figuring out who I am as a person, who I want to be and who I want to become, I would recall a lot of conversations with my mother. The one thing I said is I don't want to not deal with the things that happened to me. Now I understand that we have 2 very different lives, like I have the fortune and the opportunity to be in this country that it's encouraged. Hey, now I feel like we're getting into that space. Go and talk to somebody. Go figure this out. She didn't have that luxury. So I understand we're in 2 different places. However, for me, I see my mother now. She's not the person that I wish I can report to everyone listening right now, that she is this individual that has this incredible, laughter, and she's not. My injury was the ultimate trigger to everything that had happened in her life.
Yeah.
My mother tried to, because of fear, because of all of the losses that she had experienced in her life, then started to try to control every element of her life to keep it there, because she was afraid of being abandoned, of losing again. So in the midst of me, when I suddenly decided I'm going to join the military, and after my injury, and I'm going to go live here, and I'm going to go do this, and I'm going to go do that, and almost to some degree, my mother felt like she didn't have me. I'd kind of left her too, even though it wasn't on purpose. It was just me as a young boy trying to find myself and where I was going, and I had to find myself everywhere. And that's something for me that I take notice of. And
she felt like abandoned.
She felt abandoned. And it makes sense when you, and I think that was the beautiful thing about me going into therapy was literally being able to have compassion and be able to look at it from your perspective.
Right.
I understand what's happened in Erik's life, and I understand why he may have this opinion. I understand why Erik may act this way, or why Erik may say certain things because of his history. And because I'm willing to and curious enough to learn about your history, I'm able to have this interaction with you on a different level now, versus before I would be like, oh God, that Erik guy, I can't talk to him. I can't deal with him. I got to get away from him.
Right.
Versus now I'm able to actually have a conversation with you. And I think my mother taught me to fight. My mother taught me to have faith. My mother taught me to believe. My mother taught me to be incredibly optimistic. My mother taught me how to be a survivor, and not verbally, literally by the most simplest form of being a leader, modeling the way. Her behavior, the way she carried herself every day taught me. But then she also, on the flip side, taught me these other elements that, weren't the greatest traits that she carried, but I acknowledge them. And I know that they exist in me as well, but I also know that I have to do something to actually try to change that little bit of tradition and cycle, so that doesn't get passed down to my daughter and then to my grandkids and et cetera.
Well, JR, where you've had this incredible journey that started, you're starting it way back at the very beginning, but the public part of your journey we know is your injury, and then Dancing with the Stars and the shows that you were on.
All the work you've done with vets and with all kinds of people.
Where are you headed next? Where are you headed now? Like, I feel like our listeners, you have so much to teach and share with folks, and I'm just excited to hear where your journey is taking you right now.
I don't know. And I really don't. I mean, I know there's things that I'm interested in and things I want to continue to do. I do motivational speaking like Erik. I still want to be in that acting space. The entertainment space is something that's still alive. But a couple of years ago, and I think and Erik, you mentioned something on one of the previous podcasts. You talked about, or maybe it was the opening, if I'm not mistaken, but you talked about how you mentioned how we always talk about the successes, right? But we never talk about the failures, and we never talked about the challenges.
Yeah.
And so here, after dancing, after the book, after speaking all over the world, like everything, it just slowed down, right? It just, immensely. And I was like, what happened? What have I done wrong? And you can take this now to a business model, to where I found myself during dancing and after a few years after, I was just reactive. I was reactive, and I wasn't thinking ahead, and I wasn't thinking of planning. I wasn't thinking of preparing. I was just reactive. So suddenly when people stopped being active and there was nothing for me to react to, I panicked. And then I was like, okay, what do I got to do differently? Oh my God. Like I literally panicked because I was just too immersed into it to think that this was ever going to stop. And then I decided, okay, this is a great opportunity for me. What am I going to do? What do I want to do? And I wasn't quite sure of that. And in order for me to help me figure that out, I decided a couple of years ago I was going to go to college. Not that I necessarily needed for my field of work, but I wanted to pair the textbook knowledge with my life experience and see what I came up with. And I'm still in that journey, embarking. Obviously, as an adult with a parent and a job, it's a little bit, slower, but I'm still on that journey. And I've learned so much in that space. And I've learned it from 18, 19, 20-year-olds when a lot of people are looking at, those millennials. I'm like, right? And I'm like, that's actually incredible, insightful, intelligent, aware millennials that are out there. And I'm learning from them, as I think we all should to some degree, right? But I'm also now, and so things start.
You do online classes, by the way?
No, I don't.
Don't.
Let's do that. No, I do. I did online. I did both online and in campus.
Nice.
In class, on campus. So I literally did both, and I found myself going between 12 to 15 credits a semester, sometimes throwing in a summer course and intensive in there.
Wow,
and I was really immersed in it. And things picked up. But then, of course, things have slowed down, but it's okay. Because you know what this has done? Now this has forced me to look at, from a business model, what am I doing? What am I not doing? And what should I be doing? And who should I be partnering and doing it with to help me figure it out? Because I don't have all the answers. And so as many people would look at, from the outsiders looking in, would say, oh my God, like, what are you going to do, JR? And panic. And I was just like, I'm good. Like, this is actually an incredible time and an incredible moment for me to kind of figure it out and figure out what space I want to go to. Now, the speaking thing's always going to be there. The entertainment element of things, I mean, that's just still, believe it or not, there's barriers that exist there. And people still look at me and say, well, because of your scars, we have to talk about it. So the majority of the writing would be focused on that. And I was like, well, okay, so then we're not as innovative as we thought we were then in that space. Mm-hmm. If you're telling me this, and I've been told this on countless occasions. So, I don't know, Dave. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being in a space right now where I'm kind of at the fork, and there's a right and a left, and I might go down right a little bit and figure out, that's not it. I just know that whatever road I go down at this juncture in my life, I have the team, which is my wife and my daughter, my best friends and my family, to help me get through that path. And I have enough exposure and a life experience that'll give me the knowledge to be able to adapt and ultimately conquer whatever it is I'm setting out to conquer.
So when you fall into that kind of quote unquote rut, you have the tools, you have the foundation now to think, okay, I'm going to back up and try to figure out where I go and how I reinvent myself.
Yeah, now it's not that 20-year-old approach, right? Where it's just like, pedal to the floor and it's like, go. Now it's like this really slow 25 mile an hour, just methodical approach, and just kind of really like, okay, you know what? I think I can, instead of sitting in the standstill traffic or trying to rush through that red light and end up getting a ticket in the mail and maybe hurting myself or someone else, I'll just take a left right here. And, maybe there's a right. And then suddenly I end up on a shortcut that cuts off 3 minutes off of the Waze, and I get there safe and sound. And maybe I've kind of taken this detour that has introduced me to something brand new. So,
and where can our listeners go if they want to book you for a speaking engagement?
Yeah, so, well, thank you. My website, jrmartinez.com. There's a lot of junk up there. It talks about, it rambles on about all the incredible things that I have done. But also on social media, I am JR Martinez, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I am JR Martinez. I find myself now, I tend to be more active on Instagram. I guess that's kind of the new platform now to be active. But thank you guys so much for having me on. This is really cool. I mean, obviously, I'm an incredible fan of all the work you've done, Erik, and how you've inspired so many people. You don't even realize it. Dave as well, you as the executive director, and how you're kind of pushing this thing forward and getting the message and getting, all the ambassadors and participants out to the world and getting people to understand who's in that box and how we can remove that label and how this no barrier mindset applies to everybody in the world.
Yeah,
thanks
you,
for
JR.
being a part of it.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
And
I enjoyed listening.
Yeah. and you got more rhythm than I do.
Well, how would you know?
Yeah,
Well, my wife is
she's called that out specifically.
She's lying
She gives
to
me
you.
the play-by-play.
She's lying to you, Eric.
Exactly.
Don't believe her. It's the running man that I'm doing out there, man. You know?
I'm going to do the lawnmower tomorrow.
You got to work on it.
Yeah.
But you got to stretch, though, man, because that can get pretty aggressive, and then suddenly you pull a muscle in your shoulder and your lat, and you got to make sure you stretch for that, okay?
All right, yeah.
Well, thanks again, JR, for being with us. And Eric, as you reflect on that conversation, what stands out for you?
Well, I think one of the interesting things is like when something happens to you, you know, it's just like a second, right, of your life that this thing happens, right? And then, you know, and then you got to figure out how to move forward as JR did and kind of like roll with that, but also at the same time not allow it to define your whole life. And so I think what's really cool that JR teaches our community and everyone out there is that you can be a very expansive person, right? Like you don't have to be one-dimensional. You can really expand your life and become aware and do therapy and just really become a multi-dimensional person. So that's inspiring to me.
Yeah, and for me, sort of the enduring image actually from the conversation was the story JR told about the woman who asked if she could touch his scars. And what that symbolizes for me that I hope I can teach my kids, in that moment, there was the bravery of the woman to reach out and ask and be curious. And that's a bit bold and probably, you know, not something that many people would do. And then the ability of JR to say, this is a moment I want to embrace. And if I could teach my kids to be brave enough to go out and ask those, you know, people who are different than you, people you don't know, to be brave enough to go up and ask to learn and to engage in meaningful conversation and to not make assumptions going into those conversations, but go into them listening and learning. What a great thing to teach my kids and to teach other people.
Yeah, like those are the things that you always remember. Those are the connection points that when you take the time to be open like that.
Yeah, when I go put my daughter to bed tonight, I'm going to talk to her about what conversations did you have while I was away, and were you nervous about any of them? Did you meet anyone new? What are you going to do tomorrow? And the summit's a great grounds to do that because everyone is so warm and welcoming, and it's such a special place to have that opportunity. It's a safe place to do it. So, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, we encourage you to share this podcast with your friends, family. Please like the podcast. If you'd like to learn more about No Barriers, nobarriersusa.org. Thank you.
Thanks, No Barriers.
Thanks to all of you for listening to our podcast. We know that you have a lot of choices about how you can spend your time, and so we appreciate you spending it with us. If you enjoy this podcast, we encourage you to subscribe to it, share it, and give us a review. Show notes can be found at nobarrierspodcast.com. Special thanks to the Dan Ryan Band for our intro song, which is called Guidance. The production team behind this podcast includes producers Diedrich Jonk and Pauline Schaefer, sound design, editing, and mixing by Tyler Kottman, graphics by Sam Davis, and marketing support by Laura Baldwin and Jamie Donnelly. Thanks to all you amazing people for the great work you do.
Our minds, they are changing, and soon they will be fighting.